it was kind of, it struck a lot of anxiety at first because we were unsure about the safety of the school environment. However, it was handled quite well in trying to reinstate a position there, due to staggered bell times, as well as increased cleaning schedules by the school. So far, it's been good to be back in the school environment because we have a lot more facilities.
Okay, so which grade are you, you said?
I'm in grade 10.
Grade 10. So what did you miss most? Did you want this? Did you enjoy the online learning?
For me, I found it good in the sense that I had more time to prioritize my studies. That time helped me concentrate, and I was actually a lot more focused in quarantine. But one thing I really missed was the easiness of social interaction that was mostly found in a school environment.
So you missed your friends? You missed your friends?
Oh yeah.
And you missed your teachers? Did you miss your teachers?
Yeah, I did. That was a big issue because due to the lack of communication, it was harder in terms of answering questions and doing tests, because you didn't get that extra form of stability from listening to others' peers' answers and then basing your answers on multiple perspectives instead of just your own perspective. That was a big issue that was lost.
Yeah, but would you prefer online learning?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? All right.
Yeah.
Were you asked to socially distance yourself and wear a mask in school?
We weren't asked to wear a mask. That was optional, but during the first stage of re-entering the school environment, we were asked to socially distance ourselves. There was markers on the floor for where to stand when lining up to class, and each student had a specific table to sit on as well. Yeah.
But didn't you find communication difficult to talk to your friends? How did you do that?
In school, it wasn't a big issue because we could still communicate. It was just slightly harder because we were 1.5 meters apart due to the social distancing laws. However, communication was much better than during quarantine because it wasn't based on your phone or having to go towards Zoom calls or anything like that.
Okay, so how many students are there in a classroom?
In our classroom, there were approximately 10 students at the start. Now,
no, originally?
Oh, originally there was around 30 students in a classroom.
So you have 30 students in a class, right? Okay.
Yes.
And did you feel, were you scared of this COVID? What was your concern? What were you worried about?
Mostly, I wasn't worried for myself. I was just worried because I live with my grandmother. My grandmother lives with us, and it was an issue because COVID was said to affect the older generation. So I was worried on behalf of her safety, as well as my other family, because I have a little sister as well, and they're also more susceptible to COVID.
All right. So what did you practice at home to keep your grandmother or your sister safe? Did you have any special something in place?
It was just mainly washing your hands more. There was just a greater hygiene concerns, like using more hand sanitizer, making sure everything is clean and
okay,
there's no germs.
Did you feel that your parents were stressed about it, or were you more stressed about it?
In a way, my parents were stressed about it because they had to also balance their work along with trying to teach my little sister. And I feel like that may have been a hard thing at the time. For me, I just had to focus on myself and keeping my studies up during quarantine, and that wasn't really a big issue for me.
All right. But did you feel that, you're a different person in quarantine and a different person in school?
Personally, not so much. I don't think my sense of self was altered in any way. I was still communicating with a lot of my friends. It was just a little different, and sometimes it gave me a little more anxiety. But overall, I think I coped with it quite well because I had many hobbies that I could do. I play the piano, and I was mainly focusing on my schoolwork, so I got that done.
Okay, so what is your advice to the other children?
The main thing during COVID is when it feels like you're trapped between four walls all day, it can kind of get a bit stressful. But in Australia, we were allowed to go out and exercise, and I feel that by doing that, that helped me a lot, kind of de-stress and feel a bit more free. I also took up more hobbies like painting, and I played the piano a lot more, I noticed. So that kind of helped me de-stress and balance my lifestyle quite well.
All right, so for you, there were a lot of positives this COVID
Yes.
infection had done. You learned that you had a lot more strength, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
you realized you were more resilient. Is that what you learned?
Yeah, that's also true. That's a big aspect of it. When you're my age, it seems quite unlikely that something like this is going to happen. So it was quite distressing at first, and we went through a lot of different emotions through this. But when coming back from this, I feel like a much stronger person, and more persistent and more resilient throughout this.
All right. So you felt that the positives came out more in your life during this time, right?
Personally, yes.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you very much. I will go
Thank
to,
you.
thank you. Before I go to Jeffrey, I want the panelists to know we are having, Zoom is allowing only 100 participants. We're not sure why. So we are now live streaming this on YouTube. So if you want to recommend it to anyone, any of your friends or colleagues, you can do that. So with that, we can move to Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey. Don't sleep. I saw you yawning. Okay, and he's drinking coffee. Okay. All right. So Jeffrey, you're from Hong Kong, right?
I'm from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Tell us your experience. You're in which grade?
I'm in grade 11.
11. All right. So what is your concern about this infection regarding your education? What are
So
you
I
worried
think
about?
Hong Kong is one of the earliest city to have school suspension because we experienced some similar virus at 2003, and then it was really horrible. Like a lot of people are dead because of that virus. So that
So you are talking, Jeffrey, about the SARS virus that hit Hong Kong, right?
yes.
So you have experienced something like this.
Yeah, so like Hong Kong act really fast this time. So
Okay.
I think we have suspensions since February.
Okay.
Like yeah, after 1 week of the like kind of lockdown things, and then so I think like it was a very new experience to us because using having an online class is actually very weird, and we need to get used to it and learn and adapt to it because it takes time for us to learn things. But I mean, like Hong Kong people are really smart, so we adapt it really fast. So for as an example, like our school have online lesson at 9 o'clock and then until 5 o'clock p.m. So it's basically same as usual because the time is still very long. We have 5 lessons a day, 5 online lessons a day, and uh, 2 hours per 2 hours per lesson. Because we used to have 1 hour lesson when we are having normal school day. However, because like on a class, because it's on a class, and then it takes more time for us to concentrate and to prepare our feelings. So that's why we have 2 hour lesson now. And I think because for the online lesson problem, I think there are pros and cons. I mean, it is very good to have lesson during the pandemic. However, I mean, because there are some people that lack of self-control, so you need to work really hard during the pandemic during their suspensions so as to catch up all their
So
curriculum.
when you say self-control, do you mean discipline?
Yeah, discipline. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Because some of the student won't some of the best student won't attend any online lesson in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So you really need to work hard and then finish all the homework that the teacher distribute to you, because they can't scold at you during the online lesson, because
They can't scold you, is it?
yeah, because
okay, is that a good thing?
I mean, if you didn't finish your homework, you deserve it. But
You deserve it. Okay.
yeah, if you didn't finish your homework, yeah, that's what I think.
All right. No, but tell me, it was the same. What you were doing before, the same thing has been transferred as an online class, right?
No, this is the
Timings,
first.
because you said 9 to 5, right? It was the same before, right?
Oh yeah, it was the same before. Yeah.
Okay. So were you anxious about this? What were your feelings when this lockdown was,
I mean,
declared?
it's really bored because it lasts for 4 months, and it is really long compared to other countries, compared to some of the countries. And then I think it is quite interesting and quite meaningful, because you can use this time to practice some practice your interest, because some of the people are very busy when you're having school, and then especially Hong Kong people, Hong Kong citizens. So I think
I
sorry.
can see that you're also busy on your phone.
No, I'm really sorry, because there's some problem. I'm switching off my phone now. Yeah, so
Okay.
I think it is really good, because for me, I play guitar and I make song, and then during this lockdown period, I can make more song and post it on YouTube. So it is a very great opportunity for us to develop our interest.
Okay, so that's what Melanie also said, that she got a lot of time to all her hobbies. She honed her piano skill. So you said that you're singing. Is that what you said? You're singing your music?
I make music, and then I
Yeah,
play
you make
guitar.
music. All right, so that's very good. But were you scared, Jeffrey? Were you worried about anything when this lockdown was declared?
Yeah, really scared of about examinations, because I'm going to university. I'm getting university soon, so I'm really scared that I can't catch up the curriculum, because we need to take the exam so as to get into a good university, and it really affect our life, our futures. And because of this lockdown, we actually miss 4 months of lesson, and then there's a lot of time, and it take a lot of time to prepare and then to catch up. So this is like one of the most scariest things in my mind.
Yeah, so you're worried about your future because you have to go to the university, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, tell me, but how is it among your friends? Was it the same feeling, or was
I think it is the same feeling. Like there are different kind of people. So some of my friends are actually best students. They didn't really attend the online class, so they actually feel quite happy. But
okay. So they're happy about the lockdown.
Yeah, they're happy about the lockdown because they can
Okay.
play video games every day, all day long. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So Jeffrey, tell me, was it stressful for your parents?
I think it is quite stressful with them because they need to take care of me like every day. My mom is a housewife, so so she needs to cook one more lunch for me because I need to eat at home every day, and then she needs to wash more dishes and do more housework because of me. Yeah.
But don't you help at home? You should be helping at home.
Because I'm having the lesson.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So Jeffrey, tell me, what did you learn from this? Tell me what is bad about it, and tell me what was good about this lockdown. This 4 months, you haven't gone back to school, I presume. You're still online learning.
I did back to school right now.
You're back in school. So tell me the positive and the negative.
I think the positive things is we actually learn school is actually very meaningful, and I mean like, we need to.
Do you appreciate your teachers more now?
Yeah, of course I appreciate more now because I realized that I actually love school because when I'm having school I think school is I don't like school, but now when I really lost school and I realized that I love it and I miss it. Actually, staying at home doing nothing is really boring and it's not meaningful. But going to school, you learn things every day. So school is actually a very great opportunity for us. Yeah.
Okay, what is the negative? What was the bad part of this?
Of course, the negative things is you can't see your friends, you can't play with them because we basically lock down at home every day and yeah, stay at home every day. But sometimes we still call each other, video call each other because we really miss each other.
Okay, so you appreciated your teachers, your parents, your friends.
Yeah,
right?
Appreciate all of them. Yeah.
So you're very glad about this lockdown.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'll go to Aditya. Aditya, you're there. You're the youngest in this group of children. Can you introduce yourself and tell us which grade you are?
I'm in 7th grade.
Okay.
I'm the youngest here at 12 years old.
Okay, he's 12. Okay. Right. So tell me, Aditya, what is your experience about? Are you going back to school now, or are you still? No. So you're still at home and you have online lessons, right?
Yes.
So tell me, do you enjoy this online learning?
Not as much as I enjoy normal school, because when you go to school, you can interact with your friends and play. But on this, your teachers monitoring you at every single moment of time, so you cannot pull off any mischief here.
Okay.
Not like I do any mischief in class, but it's like for the other bad kids. Like I have seen one of my friends called Rishan. He only attended one class.
Okay.
Out of all of these.
Okay.
And the teachers were quite mad at him.
Okay. But the teacher didn't scold him?
They did actually.
Okay, because Jeffrey said the teachers in Hong Kong are very nice. They don't scold online. They scold only in school.
Teachers are very nice. They are very considerate.
Okay. So were you scared about this, Aditya? What was your first reaction when your dad or your parents told you you can't go to school, you have to stay at home? What was your first reaction?
At first, I was very sad that I could not go to school and meet my friends.
Okay.
But the second thing I was very worried that this disease is taking so many people.
Yes, Mumbai has a lot of deaths, right? So it's a little bit frightening.
Yes.
Okay.
I was more scared about my friends and my father, because my father usually goes out to get supplies for the home. And I don't know, I was very scared of my friends as well, because I don't know how they are taking care of themselves. I don't have much contact with them because I don't have a phone of myself.
Oh, yeah, you haven't been given a phone. All right, okay. Okay, so then what did you do? This online learning, has it made you, has it improved your skills, or have you learned something, or what did you do in this lockdown period? What are you doing?
It has firstly increased my respect for my teachers, because when you go for the online classes, you realize that how hard they're working to teach you, even though all these problems with the internet and then of the video connection issues, and then they try to explain it to you the best they can through a video. And and then during this lockdown, I done many things. For first, my dad, before the lockdown had started, he bought me a puzzle which was completely blank. So I could first make the puzzle and then color the entire puzzle. So that was one thing that I did with my father. Then there was a painting that I did of 4 puppies. I still have it. The sections are very minute sections. The numbers are there. They give you small canisters of paint and you can copy it. So you can make very nice paintings out of that. And
so you're learning new things every day?
Yeah, not every day, but yes, many things. Yes.
Many things. So good things have happened because of the lockdown.
Yes.
But do you feel that the tension at home, where
Yes. Hearing all the news about everywhere, all of the news that these many people have died and all of that stuff, that really scared me.
okay, you were worried, right? So are you looking forward to going back to school now?
I am very much looking forward to going back to school.
Okay, all right. So that's a good thing. But they haven't, Maharashtra hasn't declared when they're going to open the schools, right?
No.
So you still have to learn how to
In
live.
fact, my online classes, we had a break right now, and tomorrow itself is the school is reopening, as in not school but the online classes.
Okay, so name some good things and bad things that has happened because of this.
Some people got to work on themselves and do what they wanted to do that they could not have done during the lockdown during the normal work, but now since the lockdown has been done they can do these things, and so because they have so much free time now.
Okay, all right.
And
Go
something
ahead.
bad will be that you cannot interact with them, and for example that many of people's work things or things that they have to work on will be on screens or
Okay,
phones or computers, and they might even strain their eyes, which would be bad for their eyesight.
okay. So you feel that too much of online learning may affect the eyesight, is it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you so much for your input. Let me go to our last student invitee, Selma. So Selma is muted. Can we have Dr. Derek unmuting Selma, please? Dr. Derek or Dr. Rossi? Yes.
Yes, Dr. Mary. Who do I unmute, please?
Selma Hansen.
Yeah, just a minute.
Hi, my name is Selma.
Sorry.
Hi,
Go
thank
ahead,
you
Selma.
so much for having me.
Go ahead, Selma. Tell us, you are in UK, right? And
Yes.
have you started school yet, or are you still on online learning?
We are still on online learning, but we only have 3 more days of school. So hopefully we'll be opening in September by the time my 10th grade starts.
Your 10th grade. So what are your apprehensions about this? Were you scared about this when this happened? Was it something that, you felt, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? Did you feel?
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous because my school shut down a week and a half before the lockdown rules were implemented. So we really thought we would just be out of school for a week and come back. But that wasn't the case, and haven't been in school since March. So our lockdown was really sudden. I still have like books in my locker that I need to pick up. So that was really hectic, and it was just a very chaotic experience for everyone because we had no idea what was happening. We had a couple days off where we had no online learning because there was no way for the teachers to like figure out a system.
Okay.
And since I go to an international school, most of my friends are not based in London and they're from other places around the world. So that has caused a lot of them to move back to the United States.
Okay.
So that has really affected online learning because teachers aren't able to host a lot of calls because of all the different time zones. So we have a lot of freedom in that sense that most of our classes you're given an email or you check the school website and they tell you what you have to do for the day rather than online calls, which is different to other schools, I think. And that's made it, you're really in charge of your own learning. So if you decide I'm not going to do any work today, you will be behind. And you have a lot of responsibility to catch up by yourself, which is a lot of pressure. But you do get used to it after a while, I find.
All right. So was your atmosphere at home very stressful when this happened, or was it conducive to your learning? What was?
Well, both me and my older sister go to the same school, so it was nice to have someone that I could talk to about it and like how we're coping. And my dad has to work from home now, which was very different for us. And we're spending a lot more time together than we normally do.
Is that a good thing, Selma, or are you all of you getting on each other's nerves?
Well, it was really nice at first. But then obviously after a while, like we need to learn to respect people's boundaries, and we can't be together all the time because obviously I'm 15, my sister's 17, and my brother is 20. So we have a lot of big personalities in one house. So I think once we grew accustomed to that and learned that we don't have to spend every minute of every day together, it became a lot easier.
Okay, that's good. So what do you see for your future, as in, has this lockdown made you different, or are you still the same person as you were before?
I think I'm much more appreciative of school and my friends. And I think first going into it, most of us were excited because we thought, we have a 2-week break off of school. We had tests coming up, so we got to not have to take those. But after a while, I really do miss getting to talk to teachers one-on-one, being in an environment where it's so much easier for me to communicate with people. And now that's a lot harder. And you miss like things you don't think you're gonna, like I can't play any of my spring sports. All those seasons got canceled. And it's really difficult to be expecting to, finish my first year of high school with track season and all the things that you've been looking forward to all year. And when they're canceled and taken away, that's a bit of an adjustment. But I think it was really nice to be able to talk to my teachers about that, talk to my friends about that. And although like it was not something we expected and it was something that we weren't prepared for in any way, it really made me appreciate what I do have at school. And I know that when I get to go back eventually, although it might not be the same for a really long time, I'm going to take full advantage of all the opportunities I'm given at school. I'm going to participate more in clubs and just be a much more active member of my school community than I was before, which I think will benefit me in the long run.
Oh, okay. So Selma, tell me that, do you see a good future, or do you, when you look ahead, what do you see?
Well, obviously, because being a school in London, an epicenter for the pandemic, I know that going back to school, even though we start in September, it's not going to be the same as it was before. They haven't really told us what it's going to be, but I'm sure we're going to have a lot of staggered learning where, we come in on different days. And since it's a city campus, it's a relatively small school considering the number of kids that go there. So that will play a huge role in how we go back to school in terms of the amount of students every day and how long you get to be in school. So there's a lot of anxiety around that, especially because we don't know what's going to happen. And, every day we're just taking it day by day, trying to figure out what can I do today to improve the situation, like mentally for everyone. And I think that's the biggest issue for a lot of people, that we have no idea what's going to happen at school and how different that's going to be. And I think that level of uncertainty is what's causing a lot of the anxiety for students.
Anxiety. So you're anxious about the future. You don't know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Selma, thank you very much. And would any of the teachers or principals would like to ask the children anything? Would they like, if that's okay with Melanie and Selma?
Then I will unmute you.
Is there anyone who'd like to ask the children anything before we can excuse them? Any of the panelists? Yes, John has a question. Please unmute John, please.
Mm.
I think Jeffrey is not there anymore. Probably he's gone. Okay. Oh, Jeffrey is there. Jeffrey. Okay. So John, what would you like to ask the children? They're of different ages and different, they have anxieties of their future and what is going to happen. You are the principal of Island Christian School in Hong Kong, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing, guys. It is really great to hear. Always good to hear the perspective of students, and we know that there are different ways that this affects people, and it's always important to realise that at the heart of this, the learning for the students is what we're concerned about. Just got a question. I wonder if you could give us some insight into some of the new thinking about yourself that you might take forward into the future. And maybe some new skills or a new mindset I know you mentioned, you know, some of the things that you appreciate more about, you know, the things that you missed about school. What are some of the key things you think you will take forward that will make you a stronger person? Not necessarily just about your learning or schooling, but something that you know that this is a really important lesson that I've learned and that has changed me in a positive way.
So we'll start east to west again. So Melanie, can you take Mr. John's question, please? Please unmute Melanie, Dr. Derek? Dr. Derek? Okay, let me just try. Yeah, go ahead, Melanie.
A big thing I took from this was my ability to adapt to different situations. I feel that's a pretty important skill throughout life. Instead of being staggered, to be able to cope with different situations and come out stronger, to have a more resilient mindset, to be able to look at a problem and be able to flourish throughout it, and at the end of the day become a stronger and more persistent person because of it.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. Jeffrey, your thoughts on what Ms. John had to say? Ask rather. Please unmute, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think for this experience, like I've learned how to be like proactive. So I think because I used to be too passive. So I think after this pandemic, I think we actually need to be proactive, because we can't just let the things come and then we do nothing. So I think if we want that things, we need to take it by ourselves before people asking you to do so. So I think that's the major key of being successful. Like, and that's what I've learned, because you can't just wait for the teacher giving you homework. You need to like do some practice paper by yourself so as to reach the higher grade and higher level in academic. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Aditya? Can you unmute? Yes, Aditya?
During this lockdown, I've realized how much freedom we had before the lockdown started.
Oh, okay. That's true.
How many things we could do without any restrictions.
Yes.
And now I am valuing the freedom that we used to have, and we will have after the lockdown ends.
Okay. So that's what you've understood, you've realized from this whole pandemic. Thank you, Aditya. Selma?
With a more independent structure of learning, I've learned to better understand where my faults are and where I need to help, rather than letting the teachers do all that work for me and them having to point out, this is what you need to work on, you need to improve on this. I'm better able to see where my faults are, which I think in the long run is going to be so useful. Like when we go back to school normally, I'm going to be able to quicker see where I mess up and where I need to improve on in my own learning. So I think that's been really helpful.
Okay, so do all the students agree that we should have lockdowns intermittently, because all your skills and everything is coming down? Do you think we should recommend this? I will suggest it to the principals and the teachers, because it seems to be that good things are coming out of this lockdown. What do you think? What do you guys think? Should it be recommended? Melanie, what do you think? Should we have this once in a while?
I don't think that's a good idea. While on this one occasion it has brought a lot of things to light, I really don't feel that it would be a good idea to do this as a regular thing. One point I forgot to mention before was big international excursions we had were cancelled, and we lost cultural opportunities throughout this lockdown. I feel like although we've gained a lot throughout this, we've also lost a lot as well. So I don't think this should be a regular thing.
So you're not recommending it. Okay, all right. So I guess it's the same for everyone, right? Okay.
I want to say something if I can.
Yes, Inet. Inet is is a teacher from Russia. Israel. I'm sorry, Israel.
Yes. I want to say to all the students that your approach is very good. It's not that we need this terrible thing that happened to the world, but you decide to choose the good way to look at things of the good way of life, and this is very. I give you like this, very good for you and for your parents.
All right. So thank you very much. So I'd like to thank all our student panelists, Melanie, Selma, Jeffrey, Aditya, for joining. It's been a pleasure to listen to you and to your insights. We're going to put this forward to our principals now. So they have the hard task of deciding what to do with all of you. So I think all four of you can be excused now. Thank you.
But they're more than all of you are welcome to stay on and listen and stay on for the whole program.
I wouldn't recommend it, Dr. Russell.
No, that's all right, because some of them are.
Okay, if those who wish to, yes, can stay on. All right, thank you. So we will now. We've taken exactly 1 hour, and now we'll move on to our main focus also, which is on education as such, what the ethics of reopening and the psychological issues of reopening schools. So we have with us very, teachers and principals who have immense experience. And I'm sure this probably is one of the, first time it's ever happening during their tenure, I think, other than, I don't know if anyone has experienced something like this before. So I will probably start with Dr. Jerry George. Dr. Jerry, you are from India. You are the principal of Clarence High School in Bangalore. And this probably was one of the first experiences that you have, come across in your tenure as a principal. And please tell us what crossed your mind when this was when this lockdown was declared. One, how did you handle it? Two, and the third is, tell us how did you handle the students, the parents, and the teachers? Because I think in all three fronts, and even your other staff who are there. So when we say teachers, we also mean the other helpers who are there to assist. So tell us, how did you manage this in India? Because let me just say another thing that I want to say is, because Dr. Nomi is here from Harvard, USA. One of the children who from India in Kerala committed suicide because she had no access to online learning. So that was something very sad to listen. So there's some things in India which we have to take care of, because not everyone can have access to online learning. So Dr. Jerry, I'm starting with you. Please tell us your experience and how you handled it, and what are your suggestions?
Thank you, Dr. Mary. When we first heard about COVID-19 and the possibility of a pandemic, we were one of the first schools to actually shut down. We actually shut down on the 11th of March. Yes, on the 11th of March, and we had to cancel a few exams. We were in the last week of exams at that time. And immediately we did that, because I understood, and in consultation with the Board of Management and my teachers and other principals in Bangalore, we understood that this is a very, very serious issue. And so we immediately closed down, and we asked children to stay at home and shut down the campus. Over a period of time, we waited for information from the government and from various institutions as to what needs to be done. We understood that even public exams were cancelled, and now we know that they're going to happen in the month of July, the remaining exams. We did sense a lot of anxiety and fear and concern in the mind of the parents and the teachers, but we did keep on assuring them that this is something that we can overcome. We need to adapt, right? I'm very optimistic that this is something that, all of us, there is a capacity within us that God has given for us to be able to adapt ourselves for this situation. And we are going to be able to come out of this go through this successfully. There is no doubt about that. However, coming from a developing country, I do realize that there is a percentage of my students who don't have access to online classes. And so even as we suggested online classes, I did tell my teachers that we cannot afford to be as strict as we were in the regular class. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt. The the advantage of online classes is that the discipline of the students is now up to the parents. It's not up to the teacher anymore.
That's
Right?
true.
Parents have to make sure that the child is attending, that he wakes up on time, that he's sitting for class, that he's taking down notes, and that he does his homework. And so we've had very little problem in that. I'm so glad for parents who have been very, very cooperative. I'm glad for the parents of Clarence School, and I'm sure that's the case everywhere. They were able to see that teachers were doing what they could to adapt to the situation.
Did you
One of
have teachers who didn't have access to internet?
We did. We had a lot of internet issues in the initial days, and what we told the teachers is, we want you to get a better connection if that is possible. And through these days, a small percentage of our teachers are able to come to school, and we give each one of them one classroom, and they are able to take their classes. The rest of them, even myself, whatever classes I'm taking, I'm doing it from home. I stay on the campus, but I'm staying in my home and I'm taking classes from my home.
So
Yeah.
do you have, there are some teachers who can't, Dr. Jerry, just tell me, have you started, have your children come back to school, or are they still on online learning?
No, actually, well, the fortunate thing about India was that we were ending the year in the month of March, and these were 2 months of vacation, and June 1st is the start of the academic year. And so we had that time actually to think through very carefully what to do. We were not suddenly put into a situation where we had to immediately start classes. I do know that international schools had to do that, with the IGCSE curriculum or the IB, but that was not the case with an Indian school. And so we had that time. So we started the online classes on June 1st. We have not asked the students to come back, and we will not do that until we are sure that it is safe, that the parents are comfortable, and that we have put in place all the measures that are required to ensure the safety of the children, the staff, and their parents.
Okay, so did you have to deal with any emotional issues with the children? Did children call you up and say they want to come to school, or because I know I want to tell the panelists, I know Dr. Jerry very well, and I know he's one of the best principals that every child is after Dr. Jerry. I know the stories I've heard from him. So I want you to know, if children have come and told you, regarding the lockdown, how they are facing it. Have you put in systems in place? Do you have psychologists or, to address their issues, their emotional aspects? Do you have anything in place in school in Bangalore?
I wish we did. In Clarence High School, I wish we did, but I think our teachers are wonderful, wonderful human beings who've reached out to our children very well. And the feedback that we did get was that children were dying to come back to school. My own daughter is sitting cooked up at home, and she would love to just get out of the house and get back to school. But we were forced into the situation. We've been praying every day for our children that they would be safe at home, that they would be able to cope with the difficulties that they are having, being stuck in perhaps even a very small home with everybody at home. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been trying. It's not been easy.
Okay. But you have started online learning, teaching rather.
Yes. So the purpose of starting was not really to finish portions, or not really because we are so concerned that we need to finish portion. And I've been telling my teachers that the focus is get the children occupied, get them to do something, get them to do some work, because I'm living in a country where 80% of our children don't have access to the internet. They don't have access to online education. We have families where there's only one laptop or just one phone.
Yes.
And 3 children of the husband and wife have to work as well as the children. They don't have access. So we've set systems in place where the children can access these videos later on. Every class is recorded and it's put on Google Classroom. And so that, and we've told the parents, don't worry, don't be anxious if your child is not able to attend, just view the video in the evening or whenever you get time. We've also told them, look, it's just an initial phase. The government is going to make sure that every child gets access. You know, our government has been providing, well, boards have been providing television channels to reach out to the poorer children. So education has been going through certain television channels on every weekend. And
Yeah,
so children,
I've heard instances of teachers calling up the rural children to come to certain parts of the school because they don't have access to internet. So the teachers have called them and told the children to come to this particular point where the class will be taken, of course, with social distancing measures that are there. Right. So yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And we've reduced the. I'm sure they're going to reduce the portions as well.
Yeah. Okay, so that is a good thing for the students, that they're concerned that they won't finish their the portions that they have to study for that year. I will go to Dr. Steve. Dr. Steve from Australia. Can you tell us because your situation may be a little different. So tell us, how is Australia managing the education system?
Okay, well, first of all, I think it's important, especially with our international panel and guests, to just explain the context we're working in. First of all, in Australia, we're made up of a federation of states and territories. So not every state came back at the same time or in the same way, even though the federal government was hoping that schools would resume as soon as possible. And because I'm from the eastern states, Victoria, we were more affected by the virus than, say, some of the western states, and so they tended to bring children back to school a lot earlier. So in terms of the online learning or the online learning, in the government system, 97% of the students worked from home. In the Catholic system, it was about 95%. At my particular school, it was around about 92%, and it varied. So in the secondary schools, I think it was about 1%. And there's lots of reasons for that. But the government said that those who can work from home must work from home. The exceptions were families who work in essential services or children who are vulnerable. However, we also took the initiative, and this goes back to a question you previously asked, that in some cases we would actually ring the parent if we thought, due to circumstances, maybe the parent's health or something like that, that we thought the child might be struggling. If they didn't meet those two criteria I mentioned, that they could come to school. So as we stand at the moment, we have our preps to year twos. They came back 2 weeks ago, and our years 3 to 6, because this is just the primary school, will be coming back next Tuesday. So that seems to be...
So you're using something like, Dr. Steve, you're using something like a staggered approach. You don't want the children also to mix with each other and maintain social distancing. Is that what you're practicing?
Well, when we were working from when we had students on site, as I said, we had around about 8 to 10%. We did have to observe social distancing. For instance, a maximum of 8 children in each classroom, which was supervised by a teacher. And that was adhered to. On the playground, unless they were siblings, they couldn't touch each other, and that's very hard. You know what kids are like, very spontaneous, and there were things like that. However, the students that have resumed in the last couple of weeks, they're in a normal classroom of about 25, and therefore that social distancing can't be practiced because of the fact that the number of children there. However, all that sanitisation, cleaning hands, and things like that is rigorously carried out during the day. So we're sort of just kept on reiterating those importance of being clean and that. But on Tuesday, all the children will be back, and that will obviously have to be the same sort of conditions, because at the moment there are still children who are between years 3 and 6 who are working at school, but they're still working online. One thing I'd like to really stress here is that the students, whether they're working at home or at school online, it was not a two-tiered system. Some parents initially thought, oh, if my child goes to school, they'll get teaching lessons and the children at home won't. So they thought it was to their advantage that if they send their children to school, and we made it very clear that the same conditions, both for home and for school, for the online learning was the same. Sure, the teacher might help, certainly with the supervision and any technical or any questions, but no more than that the parent would do at home. So that was a very important thing to get through to parents.
Okay, please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Steve. Do you have the system of providing food for the children in the schools?
Not as a whole, where we find that certain children though have nutrition issues. It's very rare, but we do, we would obviously provide, we keep things in our fridge. But no, that's not our responsibility. We don't even have a canteen on site. I know when I was a child, children bring their own food, but we do have a service that they can order online for a couple of days a week. So that's something we don't have to deal with.
Okay, just to ask you, are there children who find school a safe place rather than their homes?
I would think there are some, and getting back to it depends what you mean by a safe place. I'll probably context it in the notion of learning. We found that some children who were struggling learning at home, we did invite them back. I rang all my parents of over 200 over a period of 4 weeks to get a little bit of feedback. And the two questions I would ask is, first of all, how are we going with the home learning? And secondly, how's your child's well-being? Now, if I got some inklings, or my leaders also rang as well, so they got at least 2 phone calls over that period. If we had any inklings that they were not in a good place for learning at home, we made provision at school. And it was usually, it's not so much the parent would ask us because they were adhering to the government regulations, but I was in a position that if I felt that children needed that particular learning opportunities, that we would provide it at school. And because we didn't go over the tipping point, we were able to, as I said, contain it to around about that 8 to 10%. It was very manageable.
Okay, but weren't you worried that the children would get infection in school? The teachers would catch the infection in school?
Yes, it's certainly a concern, and it gets back to our hygiene. So what we had was, we had the teachers, we had, I suppose, 3 groups. We had Team A and Team B. So Team A would come, teachers would come in, that's half our staff would come in on week 1, and Team B week 2. There was about 4 staff who, for various health reasons, requested that they could not come in, and we adhered to that. And we made it very clear that if you don't feel safe to come to school, you should not do that. So, and so we found that all along the staff felt that their well-being was being adhered to, but at the same time, we wanted as many teachers at school as possible depending on what team they're in, because we put a lot of emphasis on teamwork and teachers working in teams, because what the children were learning online was a compilation of all the work that they had done in their teams when we were asked to close the school in late. We were given a week. The children were virtually told by the government they had to go on the Monday, and we had a week to prepare at least the first 2 weeks of the next term. So it was in the best interest of the children's learning that the teachers worked in teams. So we planned that Team A and Team B around what grade level they taught. Those teachers who could not come to work for various reasons, health related, either from their own health or people there living with health, they were certainly adhered to, and they would have those discussions by phone or email with their colleagues.
Okay, so far you've been doing well.
The feedback we've got from parents has been phenomenal. The emails at first, because of settling in, I suppose trouble with the technology at home, and a few things about expectations of the parents, because we do distinguish between homeschooling and home learning. We don't expect the parents to be teachers, but really just to engage with their children in the learning process. But conversations that either I or my curriculum leaders had with parents smooth that over in the first couple of weeks. So by the time, say, week 3 came, and the parents, just about 100%, were very happy with the process. Sure, they had varying degrees of how they're handling it. They were very confident in the process, and we've had lots of emails thanking the school for all the work they've done.
Okay, right. Thank you so much, Dr. Steve. I'll go to Mr. John. Mr. John, you are a teacher in Hong Kong. You're the principal, sorry, in Hong Kong. I think Jeffrey had told us that they are on online learning. You can please unmute. Yeah, please unmute John. Dr. Derek or Dr. Russell, can you unmute? Yeah, you're good. You're good. You just muted him.
Right, I'm unmuted now, I think.
Yeah.
I've had this mute-unmute game before over several Zoom meetings, so we're very well familiar with all of the challenges of Zoom meetings, believe me. Well, kia ora koutou, everyone. My name is John. I'm the principal at Island Christian Academy at Hong Kong. I was born and raised and trained in New Zealand, but I've been teaching in Hong Kong for over 15 years now. We went into our Chinese New Year break in the middle of January, and we didn't go back. It was a very challenging time. We had very little preparation or notice that the schools would be shut down.
Please tell us, which stage are you in? Have you gone back to school, or are you still on online?
We have just finished our second week back of a very adapted program. So we went back on the 20th of May, which happened to be my birthday. So for a principal, a very, very lovely birthday present. We switched immediately over following the Chinese New Year break in the start of February to online learning. Fortunately, as a school, we have a lot of tools that are in place. We learnt some lessons earlier this year. This COVID-19 is not the only significant disruption in Hong Kong this year, and due to social.
Yes. I think there are a lot of other issues that's going on in Hong Kong, which has affected the education system. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And that earlier in the year, we've had significant disruptions and school closures from weather conditions, but also through disruptions due to the social unrest in the right area. So because of those earlier lessons, we had actually some tools that we were already using, and we were fortunate to be able to really switch over to those very quickly. However, we like many schools, we have a very diverse student population. We're a primary school, and of course, with younger students, one of the biggest lessons that we've learned is that actually they still require a skilled adult or an older learner there to help them access their learning through this technological platform. We know that their skills have gone up immensely. We know that our parents' skills have gone up immensely. But that was one of probably the biggest challenges, is how we tailor the program to make it accessible. So we definitely.
Alan, are you on the line?
Just one, Dr. Russell, can you mute yourself, please? Dr. Russell, please mute yourself. Thank you. All right, sorry.
One of the decisions we made early on was that we were not going to try and replicate our normal program. We realized that this could be a significant disruption, but we were not going to, we wanted to place our focus based on some of our earlier experiences in the year. We knew that the issue of student well-being was going to be the priority. And that applies to not only our students, but also to our staff, our teachers, and our families. We're a very close community. And we knew that the pressures that were going on in the home with economic issues, overcrowding in the house, with fighting in the morning for the one laptop and 4 Zooms to get underway. We knew that there were significant challenges in the home that we wanted to do our best to make sure we weren't adding to that stress. So we had a very adapted program, and we were very open in communicating that with parents, that undoubtedly this would not be life as normal, but just online. And those were some challenging challenging emails and conversations to have with parents, mostly because it really did not do much to sort of ease uncertainty about, well, what is actually going to happen in the end here. But I think over time, one of the things that our families and our community have appreciated is the fact that we have consistently been communicating with them about well-being and about caring for students, caring for families. The learning has been continuing. It doesn't look or feel normal, but actually we did enough to carry on their academic progress, but at the same time being aware that our role has been a social and emotional. Sorry, Mary, carry on.
No, because I want to address this issue of the psychological effects on children, because obviously the panel that we had, they're all very good students, but there are children who cannot cope. And how did you deal with issues, psychological issues, and thoughts of despair for among children? Do you have anything in place for them, a support system for the parents and teachers and the children?
Yeah, those were some big questions that we realised we had to face pretty early on. We have a really good learning support team, some counsellors. We have a vice principal whose sole role is to consider wellbeing and pastoral care issues. And we realised that we needed to be considering that as our #1 priority. We have a diverse student population, some with a range of learning needs. And one of the things we quickly realised was that the modes that we were using to support those students really did not transfer well into an online medium. We were able to keep connected with those students, but we certainly were not able to support their learning in the way that we had been able to face-to-face. And that was quite challenging because we knew those were some students who were potentially falling through the gaps. But again, we kept communicating almost daily with the parents to help make sure that they understand that, there's not a lot that we can do, but what we are doing, and just to continue to, express our care for them. The other issue of accessing learning, there were a range of things that we put in place in terms of technological support, training for parents. We loaned out half of our Chromebook devices from the school to individual families to help alleviate that access to technology. And I believe some of those things really helped our community understand that we weren't just closing the doors and taking a bit of a break. They knew that we were doing everything humanly possible to help support them as they became the first frontline carers and learners in the home. We also had done a lot of work earlier in the year based on some of the frameworks coming out of the States on psychological first aid. And they proved to be very valuable in helping us to understand the sorts of things that we needed to do to really be able to support our families and support the needs of what those children were going through. So all of those issues around connection and communication and community, we were constantly talking to our families and our communities, our teachers and learners about those social and emotional issues. We also run a social and emotional curriculum called Jigsaw, which has come out of the UK, which is a really great primary level curriculum that helps to speak to some of these things. So, fortuitously and through some of the earlier disruption that we had experienced, we actually realized we had in place some good frameworks and some good skill sets that allowed us to get through, to perhaps limp through 17 or 18 weeks of online learning. And there are definitely some good things that have come out of that, but we know that potentially we aren't out of the woods yet. And we've come back to an adapted learning program. So we've split our each class has been split into 2 sections. One section comes in the morning, the other section comes in the afternoon, and on those alternative parts of the day, they have some adapted learning online as well. There are some very significant health restrictions and safety precautions put in place. The Hong Kong government spent a lot of time reviewing the plans of all of the international schools in particular to make sure that they were going to meet their safety levels. So, you know, one of the other challenges that we've met is that this is not back to school. This is a new learning for some of our younger teachers who've never done chalk and talk teaching in their lives. They are now faced with separated desks, kids facing the front of the room. The teacher must stand at the front of the room and talk from the whiteboard. Now that in itself is not really the way we do learning at our school. And that was a learning curve again for the teachers to be having to adjust their learning techniques in the teaching program to cope with yet another approach to learning. So we're really hopeful following the summer.
Yeah, Mr. John, the thing is, because Hong Kong, probably the children may, you know, this repeated disruptions in their education probably may have some sort of psychological impact on them, the anxiety, and, you know, because Jeffrey obviously is quite concerned about his, you know, going into university. So they probably would have developed some sort of, you know, resilience because they go through this in some sort of periodic fashion.
Yeah, look, it would be foolish of us to ignore the fact that these are significant times, and there will be undoubtedly psychological impacts for some time to come, if not for years to come. You know, one of the reasons that we've done a lot of work with this psychological first aid framework is because it talks about recognizing and acknowledging those things, but it also gives you some strategic ways to talk about those issues with students, and some, you know, some things that you can develop in schools to be very explicit about the way that you monitor and follow up the sorts of things that you're doing in the months following some trauma. And we admit that this has all the hallmarks of a traditional traumatic experience.
Yes,
it has not been a holiday at home. It has not been adapted learning. It has been a very, very significant traumatic experience. One of the things that we really communicate clearly with our parents about is the need to control and make very explicit decisions about what their students are accessing in terms of the media, about what they're learning. We have some students who are extraordinarily anxious because they are placing some of the stories that are coming from different parts of the world onto their experience. We have been so blessed in Hong Kong. Our government responded extremely quickly. The experiences that Jeffrey mentioned, you know, from SARS, really shaped a cultural and a community response that I believe has kept Hong Kong safer than potentially it could have.
Because the preparedness is already there, and systems are in place for that. Yes. Thank you, Mr. John. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just it's so great to hear from everyone, and you know, we have a growing sense. One of the really positive things that has occurred in Hong Kong is the Principals Network in the international schools has been extremely active and very supportive, and you know, people looking for connection and networks. I believe that you know, there is a sense that we are in a global crisis, and that people are willing to reach out and help. And that help may just come down to a smiling face on a Zoom, and you know, an understanding that, hey, we hear you, and we know the things that you're going through. We're going through them too, and we'll get through them together.
Thank you so much, Mr. John. Thank you. We'll go to
Mary. Yes. Thank all of you. We've had some. Just to let you know, we've been having some difficulty with Zoom. John just said that he knows about it. For some reason, there's something happened. And just for all of you to know, we are streaming it on YouTube too. So there are several others. So if there's anyone you think who, we put it up there, Derek has put that up. So I want to welcome Dr. Alvin Chong from Hong Kong, who is also part of our team. He couldn't get in, and at last we were able to get him in. So welcome, Dr. Alvin Chong, who is the pediatrician from Hong Kong. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, hi, Professor Mary.
Hi, Dr. Alvin.
Yeah.
I'll come back to you because we have too many from Hong Kong. I want to go to Israel now.
Israel, we've got UK, and yes, we've got.
Yes, I want to go to Maxline.
Yep.
Maxline, hi. Please unmute Maxline. She's a teacher from Israel. Now, please tell us. Can you hear us? Yes. Yes. Please tell us, which stage are you in? Are you in a stage of opening schools, or are you still in lockdown, or which stage are you in?
We are at the second stage of opening. The first one we opened a month ago, where it was divided into first till third grade came into school, but each class, that were about 30 kids, were divided into two classes. We were called capsules. Yes, and that was for just over 2 weeks of that. And then the fourth till the sixth grade joined in, and everybody came back into the regular system.
All the children are back in school?
Everybody's back. Basically, they're supposed to, I'm doing this specifically because they do not, and they're supposed to come in with a mask and approval that they're healthy, that they were checked by their parents and have no temperature, and they can come in. They don't do, they forget the paper. We are not allowed to tell them to put on the masks. We have a lot of parents complaining when we are with the masks. A lot of teachers do not put them on because they don't want any awkwardness. We are supposed to be up to 2 meters from the kids, so we can be without a mask. Our classes, or I'm about 80 centimeters from the first child where I stand, and 40 centimeters from the table where I sit down and the computer. I go through a lot of classes, whether before the capsules I was only allowed to be with the same two halves of the class and work with them, finish with them, and run and do my online for another 2 to 3 hours. So we'd work from 8 in the morning till 1 o'clock, from 1 o'clock till 3 online. Not everybody, but that was the first stage. Everybody's back to school. The chaos, the violence, everything is bursting out. And it's coming from everywhere. We've been getting, even the government had meetings with parents saying, we're the ones that created this big problem and situation. And everybody's against the teachers here in a very bad way.
No, but please explain, why are they against the teachers? Because I cannot understand why they're against teachers.
Basically because they cannot go to work. So it's very easy. Only now they started going into a system of going to work. And then there's a problem of summer. Our summer is coming up, our summer holidays coming up, and they volunteered the teachers, the elementary school teachers, to add 9 days for free to teach in school in July. So we have to do that. We're not covered insurance-wise, but the parents, it's not enough for them. So the government added like a summer school for the kids, different age groups, and the kindergartens till the 6th of August. Still not enough for everybody. For the working parents, it's difficult here. Now, what happened was, after the elementary school kids came back into the system, then came in 2.5 weeks ago, came in 3 weeks ago, the junior high and high school went back into school. high school grades 11 and 12 are actually working a lot from home. But they do meet up and come to school. But the main problem is the junior high. And that's where schools have been shutting down because the kids coming back to school, we are not allowed to scold them or tell them off if they don't put on the masks. So you have now until yesterday evening, something like 106 schools and kindergartens have been shut down because the kids are bringing in the disease back into the schools. And of course,
no, but Madam, tell me whether, are you seeing a change in personality of the children?
Yes, I noticed that the ones that were in the capsules with me, basically the day after, they were begging me, when they went back into their whole classes, they were begging me to help them find a way to go back to that. And
why is that? Why is that?
Back to the, because each one, can you imagine having a class that is planned for up to 25 kids, 35 kids in it? They are kind of step on one another. They're squeezed one another, and there's no room to pass, no room for their things. Everything's falling, and they feel frustrated. And suddenly they had this space. They had a whole table to themselves, room for their things, space to walk around, and they were calm. Now, my daughter is in the 7th grade, and she's in a 40 kids in the class in general, and they came back gradually. And last week, it was horrendous. 40 kids in the class, and the violence and the pushing and the touching and all excitement. But the minute they were closing down schools, this is one of the first schools that changed back to capsules. And that was something new to her. Last week, for the first time, my daughter had they divided the class into 3 because, so there'll be in Israel, it's under 17 children in a capsule.
Classroom.
Suddenly they divide them into 3 groups. And 3 days they study at school, or 2 days, each week is different. They study the same hours, but she said, Mommy, it was quiet. We learned. Even the kids that always go crazy and disturb are quiet. They're participating. They even say it. And I noticed it when a kid I teach that just can't sit and touches and moves all the time in the 3rd grade. And I taught in the capsule. I couldn't believe it wasn't the same kid. And as he saw me coming back into class with the whole group, I teach English as a 2nd language. And so it's even harder for them to adjust. This kid comes to me in tears. He said, I can't learn anymore. I can't focus. It's too much movement, too much noise, too many things around me. I can't, Maxie, I'm sorry. Get back to that. It's, first of all, it's budget. The main thing is budget.
It looks like as if the teachers are also under stress. It is not only the children and the parents. I think all of you are stressed. So obviously, this lockdown has brought in whatever was subtle has now become, overt. So I think that's a unique problem in Israel. Looks like it. Can I go to UK? Is Miss Anne there? Anne Graham from UK? I cannot see her video, and because I'm keeping Dr. Ashish, I'm keeping you for the last because you have to, kind of unite us all together.
Anne is here.
Can you please unmute?
Mary, I think before Ashish, I think Noemi wanted to say something.
No. I think Dr. Naomi will get you last. I think you're okay with that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she's okay with that. Okay. Miss Anne, tell us. Miss Anne is my sister's name is Anne, and she's a teacher, and all her children call her Miss Anne. So I feel very, happy calling you Miss Anne. tell us your experience UK. What is happening to the children? What's happening to the parents? What is happening to the education system?
Where in the UK is Anne from? Mary, you
I'm in a rural school in the southwest of England near Bristol. It's a secondary school, so it's 11 to 18-year-olds, and quite a mixed catchment area that we have. We've been into lockdown about 10 weeks, and the intention is that secondary schools will go back on the 15th of June. We've been teaching pupils online, as many other of my colleagues have said. We had quite a few pupils that didn't have access to IT, as was mentioned by some colleagues. So we printed large packs of materials and then have physically taken them to the pupils' houses so that pupils that didn't have IT did have the access to work.
Okay.
So not quite the same, but at least could keep up with the work.
Yeah, so that there's no disruption in the education.
The theory is, yes. As also colleagues said, some pupils have massively engaged with the process and are very up to date with the work, really impressive. Some pupils have not engaged, and some families have found it very hard to develop a routine and to support their young people.
Okay. So, I mean, how are your teachers handling it?
The teachers, I think, are doing really well. Teachers are working from home. We have pupils whose parents are critical workers go into school all the time. Vulnerable pupils can go into school if they choose to. And initially, not many went in. And as time is going on, they've found it more difficult to cope with being at home, and more vulnerable pupils are now going into school. So we have a small group of teachers who work in school, and the rest are doing their lessons from home.
Are you in touch with the children, Miss Anne?
I phone pupils every day. The vulnerable pupils I speak to 2 or 3 times a week, and always speak to their parents and always speak to the pupils.
So how is your experience? Are they coping with it, or are they, what is your experience? Are the children coping?
So the pupils that are vulnerable loved it to begin with, and as time has gone on, have often found it harder to keep up with the work and to maintain the self-discipline and to maintain a routine, and they've found it harder. Other pupils are enjoying the freedom of having time to do their own interests, but the pupils I particularly work with are the ones that have an emotional or physical vulnerability in the first place.
What are your concerns, Ms. Anne?
So I'm very concerned that we introduce them back into school gradually, and we're starting to do that with pupils we are worried about psychologically. They're coming in 1 day a week, perhaps 2 days a week, and working in a small group to make them feel confident with coming back and build them up to a feeling that they don't feel anxious about what they've missed, and they will cope with moving forward and then be able to really work from where we want them to be.
Do you think that there has been some permanent changes in the children that you won't be able to, kind of repair is not the word, but, kind of undo? Do you think that this has affected them in a big way, or do you think, we'll be okay? I mean, the children will be okay.
I think they will be okay. I think we can't ignore the difficulties for that small minority of pupils, and we need to address it. And the school has got a program to consciously address that, rather than just assume that they come back and they get on with learning.
Okay, because education-wise, educational knowledge, I mean, all teachers and schools have ensured, but the social skills, the emotional, skills, that is where the problem is now.
Yes.
That is what we have to address.
I think so, but all pupils have been phoned on a regular basis, and vulnerable pupils phoned often. So there has been an emotional link, and I think that's been very helpful.
All right. Okay. So what happens to teachers who have health issues, or they're pregnant and they don't want to come back to school? because they're scared, that they will get the virus. Because you probably will have young group of teachers who are,
Yes, the schools, every individual was asked to confidentially explain any reason why they would not be able to come back into school. Some teachers will continue working from home. Okay. Some teachers will continue working with the group of vulnerable pupils, another group. So the staff is divided into separate groups who will work with different groups of people until everything is resolved. So there'll be pupils working with the younger pupils, teachers working with the older pupils, and they'll stay in a sort of bubble of colleagues.
Okay, so do you anticipate any problems from the parents that they're scared to send their children back to school in risk getting the virus?
I think some are talking to some, particularly with underlying health issues in their family. They're obviously worried about it. The school has been very transparent in giving a great deal of detail about how we're ensuring that the virus won't be passed on. So I think they're feeling much more confident, having really been included in the detailed planning.
Yeah, no, I just want to ask all the school teachers and principals, do you think it helps to have a policy or a guideline in place now that we are in such a situation, so that, just like in any pandemic or any disaster, if, what are there anything, is there something in Australia, is there something in Hong Kong, or anything in UK or Israel, some systems in place, God forbid it happens again, are there any guidelines formed yet by the education system? I mean, this is open to all. Maxine?
Yeah, put your hand up. If you, Steve, is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, Steve is there. Steve.
Okay. The problem in Israel is it's up to the ministry. The ministry is the one that actually, for example, in my school, a teacher that had cancer a few years ago, they basically didn't let her stay at home. She had to figure out other ways. She had to fight it legally. That's the problem, because even in my family, if someone is sick, you're basically supposed to not go to work. In Israel, you have the approval to do that. Not in the schools. We have to be there, even if we're over 60. Like in Israel now, it's back to you do not see your grandchildren because it could be dangerous, but you can see children that you're teaching and you're in class with them. It's a dilemma. I think it's because of the lack of the amount of teachers you have and the support.
Madam, is there any guidelines in place in Israel?
They do not want to put in guidelines now because it will, every day they change things here. Okay. For example, the closing of the schools and was in March, was in the evening of after Saturday, 9:30 at night. We're told we have to Zoom, give our first lesson 8 o'clock in the morning on Zoom. 11 o'clock at night, we have to send in the stuff, and teachers saying we can't do things. So we had to work at it. They're not sure. Everything is like trying to solve the problem and online and trying to do it as fast as they can, mainly to get the parents working. So things will start working up in Israel. On the other hand, keep the kids safe, but we have to, no guidelines for that.
A quick one because I do have to bring in Dr. Nomi and also Dr. Ashish Nanda. I just want to know, are there guidelines in Australia, Dr. Steve?
Not that I know of. I'm not trying to get away from the question, but for me, the most critical part is what are the new learnings we've made as a result of this going forward in education. We've talked about well-being. The question John asked was, I think, the most critical one when he asked the students, what have you got from this going forward? And everyone said in their own way, they talked about self-regulation. And that to me is was one of the most critical factors. The kids who struggled on online are the ones who had trouble self-regulating. Those 4 responses all gave me the impression that they knew how to self-regulate. So what I think with our professional learning, apart from guidelines, is that we really need to focus. It's nothing new about self-regulation. It's been around for a long time, but I think it's now going to get a heightened awareness because of what's happened. Okay,
right,
that's just
thank you. Yeah, you say that we should teach our kids to, the self-regulation is what is
we
important.
need to give them skills, critical thinking, perseverance, all those things we've been talking about.
It's important, yes.
They're the ones. Yeah.
Because in places, governments have failed us, so we need to get the children, strong. Mr. John, Hong Kong, any guidelines? Yes, no, 2 words. 1 word rather, yes, no.
Yeah, yes from the government, and also yes from schools who are implementing their own sort of things going forward. Ours are going to be based on focusing on well-being in a time of struggle. So rather than trying to figure out what we're doing with our learning, we're going to be focusing going forward on what we do with our learners in times of stress.
That's very good. And Miss Anne, any guidelines, UK?
I don't think there's any UK guidelines, but certainly schools are working together to come up with things.
Okay, India, Dr. Jerry, are you there? Any guidelines? If he's there, you can't see him. All right.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Jerry, any guidelines? Sorry, are you?
The government is still working on it, but they've asked each school to consult with parents and to get back to them, and they're going to come up with it.
I think the Karnataka government has put in guidelines. They're putting in guidelines that yeah, thank you.
It's on its way. Yeah,
it's on its way. Yeah. So I'm coming back to before Nomi, you can close the whole session because that is very important, the psychological issues. But I want to link this. Education is important. Yes, we have to think about reopening the schools. There are problems if we reopen, but there's also problems with economy. And Dr. Ashish, you can tell us. Can you tell us what is the problem? If we don't open schools, what is going to happen? If we open schools, what is going to happen to the economy?
But I think, Ashish, Dr. Ashish, linking, we started with this preamble, education, health, and opening up recovery, the economic recovery. So it's very important from you're the economist from the Harvard Business School. If you can bring this together, it'll be very nice.
Well, thank you. Thank you to both. And I've been listening very carefully to the students and to the principals. With great deal of respect for the students. They are very committed. I see Melanie there, but I heard from others, Aditya, Jeffrey, the wonderful student from London, really appreciate their commitment and the absolute heroic effort that principals like Jerry and Steve and John and Maxine and Anne are doing. So really hats off to both of them, both sides. But let me highlight something that John mentioned. We are going through a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Pandemic is a trauma, and it's a trauma for the educational system. And let me point out 2 dimensions on which it is a trauma. And the third point, looking ahead as we open up. The first dimension of the trauma is in spite of the commitment of our students and in spite of the heroic efforts of our teachers, quality of learning has been significantly lower since the pandemic began. Yes. The bandwidth is significantly lower when you do distance learning as opposed to face-to-face. It is unidirectional as opposed to iterative. Very often training tends to be iterative. You get feedback, you learn from there. There is the equivalent of Zoom fatigue. People who have been doing distance learning for 3 years, 5 years tell me that in the best of world, they are able to communicate 60% of what they could in face-to-face interactions. And learning is not just about rote learning. It is also social learning. People communicate with each other, and particularly as you make transitions from pre-kindergarten into kindergarten, learning to work with other kids, from middle school to high school, from high school to college. No surprise, Jeffrey said we are worried what the future brings in. So there is a significant diminution in quality of learning, notwithstanding the commitment of the children and notwithstanding the heroic efforts of the teachers. There's research on this. There's a piece of research coming out of NWEA Brown University and University of Virginia, which shows that learning is declined significantly. There is a piece of research that just now, actually I was just sharing it with Nomi, McKinsey has come out with, which shows that in fact learning has significantly declined during this time. So that's the first observation. Second observation, which makes it even sharper, harsher, is that the social differences have become acute, more acute, even more stark. So you look at special needs children, you look at poor children, you look at rural children, you look at women students in some of the developing countries, the impact is significantly different between the rich and the poor. And again, I have great respect for students who are trying to learn in this new environment, but there are also students who have no access to internet in a number of countries. There are students who used to go to school, Mary, you just asked it in the passing, who used to go to school and get their one full meal of the day, the
yes.
or breakfast schemes. There are students who are in households where they do not, leave aside having a space to do a Zoom discussion, these are not safe places, psychologically and physically safe places for them. And so there is a great deal of further sharpening of social distinctions that has happened. And there is a lot of research coming out right now showing some of this. Again, Nomi sent me a piece, which is a research done by a Georgetown University, Holzer and Larrick, which shows that in fact the social gaps have become extreme. There's research coming out of Brown University and Harvard, which is showing that people who are accessing online math, the rich are able to do a lot of it, the poor much less. There is research coming out of Center for Reinventing Public Education, which shows that the poor are doing much worse. So the world is actually becoming even more sharply divided between the haves and the have-nots. So this is what is happening right now. Now let's look at where we are headed as we move to the future. When we open up, by the way, educational institutions are high fixed cost institutions. Most of your costs are fixed costs, teacher salaries, infrastructure costs, etc. Your costs are going to rise up. Maxi, or I think somebody else mentioned that instead, or maybe was it Anne, instead of 30 students, we now have 10 students. You have social distancing costs to incur. You have costs of investing in technology to incur. And so you are going to have higher costs, most of which are fixed, and you will have students coming into educational institutions not very sure about how much their educational value there is. You are going to be in a cash squeeze. By the way, Russell, I'm not talking about colleges just now. That's a whole different world.
That's the next session. That's the next session.
Yeah, let me focus on schools just now. You are going to have, the world over there is going to be an economic recession in coming months, and hopefully it'll be months, not years, but maybe years. World over there will be an economic recession. There'll be huge demands on funding, demands coming from healthcare, very good demands, reasonable demands coming from healthcare, but there'll also be demands for public safety, public security. Unfortunately, there are great deals of tensions that are arising between nations and within nations. So demand for defense, etc. I worry very strongly that education will get its share of public funding. And so here is a world where this is in crisis, where your costs are going to rise up, and where in fact there will be lots of other demands on funding. Now you put all this together, I think this is a crisis facing us, a crisis for special needs students, crisis for Black students in US, crisis in India for the rural poor and the migrant poor. And I think it's not only the commitment of the current students and the heroic leadership of current principals and teachers. What matters is great deal of public understanding and appreciation that resources have to go into education to try and make sure that we don't end up breaking one of the strongest elements of social infrastructure, which is an educated society. So on that very, very pleasant note, Russell, I'm sorry, but that is my sentiment just now. Let me
You,
just
you don't have to be sorry. You don't have to be sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashish. Very nicely linked together. And I think because we have now exceeded time, the last is for Nomi. Nomi, you can take your time, Dr. Nomi. I'm concerned about the children. I'm concerned about the psychological effects, what this pandemic will do to them. I'm concerned about the teachers. I'm concerned about the administrators and who have to deal with all this. Tell us, what are the psychological or psychosocial impact of this lockdown?
Let me thank Ashish. I think you put this very well, and it is a concern and it is worrying. And I hope this will not be. It might be not as bad. I hope. Have wishful thinking, but we'll think positively. Yes, but thank you very much for bringing that so beautifully from different dimensions, putting it together. And that's, I suppose, the economists look at it like that rather than us looking at it more from each our own domain. Thank you very much for that.
Can you, Dr. Nomi?
Yeah, Nomi's unmute.
Yeah, so thank you. And I do want to sort of start by acknowledging the extraordinary kind of heroism that is described and captured in everybody's experience here. I think there's a lot to say, but in 5 minutes to sort of condense a few themes. I think one thing that's maybe worth a starting point is that one of the core features of trauma is a sense of lost control. When the locus of control is taken away from you, and these themes of kind of uncertainty and not knowing and not being able to in any way control the pace or the change or the trajectory, that's part of where that sense of adversity lies. And where we can find components of control in the ways the students, for example, talked about structuring their time, finding these kind of micro moments that make us feel as though we are more in control. I think that's a crucial point. I think, I tend to take this trauma-informed approach to this. There are this sort of, it recognizes that people's lived experience and trauma and adversity informs the way that they engage with everything, from their education to their health.
From Harvard.
Yeah. Oh, should I introduce myself? I'm sorry.
No. Dr. Russell is talking to someone there. Please go ahead,
Okay.
Dr. Nomi. Sorry.
And so we sort of think about principles like transparency and trustworthiness, and that ends up sort of being relevant for the schools, for the government, and for each other. Collaboration and mutuality, recognizing that this is a process that needs to be iterative, and when it feels again as though things are coming down in ways that feel illogical and unworkable, we again sort of rise to this level of distress. I thought it was incredibly poignant, this description of a student who would, take their life because they feel as though this lack of access to resources meant lack of access to a future. And that's when we want to go from the most vulnerable and the most crucial to the great potential for post-traumatic growth, we want to highlight that these disparities that get magnified by the lack of access to education can take this tremendous toll. And so we don't want to be fatalistic about the toll because there is so much room for intervention to change those trajectories if we identify those vulnerable groups and direct resources to them. But as Professor Nanda has mentioned, it's going to be a real challenge to get within all the competing resources, those directed to schools. I think in that context, it's really valuable to recognize that education serves both the kind of content development, but for many, many students, this idea, it is the source of food security. It is the source of their social network, and sometimes for their parents as well. It is a community building environment. It is where the only place that some people can feel safe, and it's the only place that we can monitor whether they're safe. And so allowing schools to have the counseling that is needed, the nursing that is needed, the other kinds of resources that will allow both the children to flourish and the teachers. I think this notion, when you get this snapshot of how a student looks like a problem student in a crowded context and an attentive student, when you create a smaller classroom, it's this idea that we end up sort of pathologizing the child, pathologizing the family, when what we're looking at is a sort of downstream effects of some very clear structural economic, racist kinds of policies that create a framework within which
I just my thoughts, Dr. Naomi. What I understood, what I think, who is it, Maxine? Or yeah, Maxine said about this children, in different. Is it because the child in a crowded classroom does not get attention? That's why they become very this thing. But when you give them attention, they become quiet. Is it because of that, or is it?
I think, as with everything, it's multifactorial, but I do think that there are contexts in which children, where they are less distracted, more able to attend to what's happening, and where there the iterative description of learning, you see the child and the child sees you, and there is this kind of our mirror neurons are activated in ways that neurobiologically we can understand are much more engaged. They can hear better, they can attend better. So that's certainly one component of it. We know with these sort of larger classrooms, there are they're called behavioral issues, and it's very difficult to unpack, what, and we do have this kind of like an epidemic of attention deficit issues that I think need to be understood in the context of their environment.
Dr. Naomi, can you just, your advice to the teachers, because we have principals, we have teachers, we have, to the parents, to the children. What is your advice at this crucial time, with so much of disruption and so much of, uncertainty, unsure what is going to happen? What is your advice for all of them?
So I guess there are two components. One is to remember that we want to be really clear about what is a normal response to an abnormal situation, and at what point has that crossed into functional impairment and really pathologic distress. And so we want to be, providing sort of wellness and well-being support where it's in that psychological first aid domain, and really identifying the most vulnerable and ensuring that we're giving them much more kind of professional services. I think the second level would be to remember that this is not forever, that this is
it's temporary. It's temporary.
And we can endure and withstand a great deal when we feel as though this isn't something that is indefinite. That said, I think the sort of third component is we have to recognize this confluence of the pandemic and the intense social unrest that's occurring means that for some part of our population, it feels as though this is one part of it, but it's a snapshot into what they feel is a much more trapped world that is going to continue with the inequity. And in those contexts, one of the most important things is ensuring a sense of meaning and empowerment. And so thinking about the ways that people can feel as though they are engaged in advocacy, that they are in some way contributing to be part of a solution, even if it's in a micro way. This creates a sense of meaning and purpose, and again, bringing that sense of control back.
That I think is very important for the teachers also, because if this is transmitted to the student, then they have a purpose. So I think that's just sorry.
Yeah. No, I would just sort of end. We're talking a lot about sort of there's equality and then equity, and now we think a lot about justice, and where justice is about removing barriers to access. And we recognize that there's kind of transgenerational or intergenerational transmission of trauma, but there is similarly potential transmission of engagement and empowerment. and sort of being able to model, to be able to project to students, I'm upset also, but this is what I'm going to do. And sort of, somebody spoke about self-regulation. Sometimes we also think about distress tolerance. And that's probably the skill that gets us furthest in life. And so giving skills around distress tolerance, part of it is self-regulation, and part of it is this externalized sense of social network and a sense of community and a sense of engagement that will complement both of those domains.
Yeah, I think that's what Dr. Steve also said in Society for Guidelines, teach the children self-regulation and probably, and support them. Probably that is the, very good way to go. So I think we have exceeded time. My apologies. We cannot take this any further because I can see Dr. Steve is already in the brink of, sleeping, I think. But he's muted. But thank you very much. For those who are here on the panel, that's Enid and Deborah, you're coming into our next session next week. So please don't feel bad that we have not included you. You are there in the next panel. And we also welcome this panel to be there for the next, because it is a continuation of what we're talking about. So it'll be lovely to have all of you there. I thank all of you. There are beautiful responses from the participants, and I thank the panelists who are responding to the questions. And it's really encouraging to see, and like you all, when Dr. Ashish said, the heroic efforts of teachers, and that is why I loved my teachers, because they made a difference in my life. And I think this is the best time for the teachers to bring out the best in them. I think, so that children, because children are going through a difficult time. So I thank all of you. And I'm sorry I had to give all of you just one chance to speak, but I think we've covered quite a bit. We've understood a lot. And I thank you for views that have come across the globe. And we hope to continue this discussion because this is a problem that may not go away immediately. We are going to be, talking about this for a, few more months, hopefully, and not more than a year. So thank you very much. And I will hand it over to Dr. Derek. Would you like to say anything regarding the participants? And
I think.
Thank you, Melanie, for staying. She's still up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Derek, I want to thank Derek. We've had, unfortunately, today we've been a little bit handicapped with, I do not know why Zoom has done this to us. And Derek, thank you for arranging for a live streaming on YouTube. So we had to move many of our who are partly come along to move to the. It's still going on. Is that right, Derek? Am I right?
Yes. It's live streaming there and being well appreciated there as well.
So we don't know. We have 1,000, but this is. We hopefully next week we'll have it back and to where it should be. I don't know why this happened, but what's happened?
Okay.
I think somebody just
sharing screen, I think, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay, Derek, do you want to thank and you want before I?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Russell and Dr. Mary. Excellent moderation. That's the theme that has been all across the chat, not only here, but on YouTube as well. And of course, very grateful thanks to all the moderators. Everything that you said, the panelists, sorry. The panelists who your views articulate and resonate with the teachers and the students all over the world. And like I said in the chat, it's a time for solidarity. It's a time to understand that our problems are exactly the same. It was so nice to hear John talk about 4 people sharing one laptop, and that's the same issue here. You have a laptop, you're in that bracket, but still you have to share it for the Zoom. So it was really heartening to hear that part of the story, and we need to find new ways. Our students are already helping us out. They're very inventive, and I must thank my students from our Student Research Council who told us about this YouTube live streaming because we had the same problem yesterday. So I think when we get our students online, It's a new beginning, it's a new way of life, and I'm sure they'll guide us and we'll all be able to find new solutions to this way of life. So thank you, everyone, and looking forward to the continuation of this next Sunday. Dr. Russell, please.
All right, so we come to this point where we look at everything and want to thank all of you and thank all our participants. We have had a large number of participants. I was trying to readjust because all of them were some of them or many of them were disappointed, but we'll try. I want to apologize for that to all our participants, and we will definitely for the next one make sure that it's back. I'm not sure why this has happened, but anyhow, the important thing here is we have had exposé of our solidarity. I always bring forth that Article 14 of the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights brings this solidarity and cooperation, and our whole purpose of these webinars, now the 11th and 12th, which has been covering many aspects, are indeed to bring forth this solidarity or humanitarian solidarity, as you'd see, and the UNESCO chair in bioethics, the Department of Education has been striving, and it's beautiful to see that we have, from China to India, and on the other side we have the United States and UK and Australia. So we are indeed the global. You represent this world that we are, and very importantly, I think all had such a such a lot to contribute. And I want to commend the students. We have these students who gave us a good insight. Dr. Mary, you would agree that this time bringing the students, indeed, it was an insight, and I think, and more importantly, to know that, again, from around the world, from UK and Australia to China and India, and we see that. I think it's been a great learning for all of us, and and then I have the Dr. Ashish Nanda from the Harvard Business School, who last week gave us I particularly wanted you here to give all of us in the health and education, and to bring in this aspect which ties together so many factors that are going to pull factors and so forth that we all are going to be facing and having to deal with. I think is indeed great. So again, I want to remind all of you that you are in the same, all of you are in the panel for, this goes on for two weeks, and I mean, sorry, 2 Sundays. And the important thing is that what you've all spoken here will have relevance, and you will be invited to give your comments. I want to tell you that we have, along with you, and I introduced when I started, this very distinguished panel who are going to be speaking. We have, besides looking at, as Ashish said, we'll have a brief looking into the college part of it, which you said is another, the opening into their career, how this is impacted on that group of students and teachers. Then we go on to tell you that we look at beautifully what you've said, and what does this all mean when we talk about health, psychosocial consequences of what we've just heard. And I think there we'll bring in now pediatricians and Nomi and Harold, and then we have Kevin Churchwell, who's a pediatrician, and our Alvin. He had, I think Alvin must be on site here, Al from Hong Kong. So we have also Sergio from Brazil, and we are very happy, Deborah, You will be there, Deborah. I did introduce you when we couldn't see you, but Dr. Deborah is also from Brazil. She's a physician, and she'll be there next week again. So we have another rich panel, and it'll be all of you again bringing your comments together. So we will be looking at, and very importantly, we'll also have Init talking about the parents, where she's dealing with the parents. And I think we see not only students, not only teachers, but parents in this whole caught up in this in what's happening. And importantly, it's not just the lockdown, but looking at opening up, as Melanie brought. She has been experiencing the opening up already, and that itself has brought more issues to be taken into account. So with all this here, our next week's panel, I've already told you, we'll have all of you plus, and all of you already, Harold is here, all of you are here. There will be Deborah is here, Nomi is here. Yes,
well.
there's Harold.
Dr.
Harold
Joe Thornton
yeah.
is here.
And Joe,
well.
where is Joe? Joe Thornton. Oh, yes, Joe is another important, who has been from the day one working with us. Joe Thornton from Florida, University of Florida. We're all, and Elora Finlay, Baroness Finlay, she's there. She's also part of this program. We together have brought in short the world that we all represent together. So I'm very delighted that this time I've had a good, we had from Australia, Steve Beresini has been working with me, and has, from Australia, he's doing a great job. One of the very senior teachers, I think, given more than 3 or 4 decades of teaching in Australia. So I'm very glad to have brought all of you. So we will close, but not end. We'll continue to think about this, and we'll come back. We'll regroup next Sunday and at this time, and we will take this on and get on and bring in. We've covered education, we've covered economy, and now we will also look at the part where we say the linchpin between between education and healthcare is economy. So again, I want to give that Nomi and Harold wrote that beautiful essay, and I think Nomi, you'll be able to talk about the choiceless choice, the choiceless choice. Is that right?
Choiceless choices, making parents
choiceless choices.
Yeah.
Yes, very important that all of us in the teaching, it's called choiceless. Say that again, Nomi.
Choiceless choices. I think that's the term of Robert Lifton. That people are being forced to choose between work and sending their kids to school, or homeschooling, or childcare. But we can talk about that next time.
Yeah. So that's an introduction to what we'll be looking at in the next week, looking at some of these areas. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Dr. Mary, for an excellent moderation. Dr. Derek moderating, multitasking with me and trying to bring this together. And we hope, and we will make sure that next week Zoom won't let us put us in this type of a situation. Although we've got a paid for a large number, for some reason this has happened. So thank you all, and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, stay very well and stay safe, and we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you, and bye bye to everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Dr. Steve, good night.
Good morning here.
I know.
Yes, wonderful day to everyone, and good night to our friends from Australia.
Have a good weekend.
Yes, Dr. Deborah. Good.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you,
looking forward
Deborah.
to hearing
Thank
you
you very
next
much.
time. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. qué descansar.
Thank you again, Dr. Russell.
Thank you, Naomi. So we'll have more opportunities next week to continue.
I think Harold will have a chance also to speak to all of that. So
Yeah, but we want both of you. We want both of you to bring in what you're doing, the work that you're doing. I think it was, it was very nice to see so much. We learned a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extraordinary the way you bring such a broad group together and then have that sort of narrative arc. It was really effective. So, okay.
I don't know why we have 1,000, but I don't know what has gone wrong. And we were very disappointed that so many people, but anyway, Derek was able to get the
yeah, it looks like YouTube was a helpful,
very helpful
adjunctive mode.
Yes, and that's helped us a bit. Yes. Anyhow, Nami, we'll see you. Oh, we'll probably look at as Harold had done once before. And here's Elora. Thank you, Elora.
Hi, thank you. I was going to say, Russell, I think congratulations to Derek too, because do hand on thanks to him, because he just quietly gets on with it in the background, and he's really very, very good. But I have to say, I really admire Mary. She's gone now, hasn't she? But she does share it very, very well. She really
she's an extraordinary moderator.
She's extremely good, and I thought she was particularly impressive with the children.
She's very fond of children, I know, as she's a teacher.
Yeah, but she was really good with the children, then didn't talk for too long. And I thought she was also actually very effective, because John was going on so much that he lost everybody. You know, you can only have short, I think people's attention span on anything on the media is about 1 to 2 minutes, and the minute it's longer than that, people drift away, they don't listen, they're lost. And John was just talking as if it was a social thing, and I found, certainly I drifted off, I completely lost the train of thought, whereas those people who were very precise and concise, and all the children were very good at that, actually.
I thought the children did very well, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
they did extremely well.
Melanie still was there till the end.
Yeah, yeah. And
well, it was good.
I'm going to go.
And thank you for bringing Anne in. I spoke to her on the phone, and we had I rang her this morning in your time.
Great.
And so we were.
She was good. Actually, she was very clear and very clear about the children who've got needs and the children who haven't got needs, and how they're managing it and how they're managing different needs amongst the staff as well. But I thought she got her points across very concisely. So I was pleased with her. Good. You're welcome. Okay, bye now.
So,
bye.
Bye-bye, and we'll see you next week. Yeah.